A Werewolf Shifter Romance by Cauliflower Campbell. Chapter 21. The Bloom of Youth. Lycan Ridge High was not an ordinary school. Built with towering stone arches and ivy creeping up its sides, it carried the weight of legacy. Generations of heirs, daughters, and sons from the most powerful families walked its polished halls, their footsteps echoing against marble floors that had seen centuries of laughter, rivalry, and whispered secrets. The very air of the school carried tradition. The banners of old houses hung from the vaulted ceilings, their sigils stitched in thread of silver and blood red, each claiming their triumphs and heritage. Chandeliers glowed with warm golden light, casting reflections across the marble floors, so polished that one could almost mistake them for mirrors. In these halls, youth carried a sharpened edge. Every word spoken, every glance traded, seemed to ripple with meaning, alliances formed in the space of a smile, rivalries cemented in the meeting of eyes. It was a stage, and every student here was both actor and audience, dancing to the unspoken rules of legacy. Among them walked Iris Stormbane, the golden heir of her house, with her sleek blonde hair that caught sunlight like threads of spun gold, and her eyes, clear-cutting storm blue. She carried herself with a kind of effortless grace that demanded attention without asking for it. Whispers followed her when she entered the halls, but never in ways that diminished her. It wasn't envy so much as reverence, though envy lingered silent in the corners of shadows. She wore her uniform with a tailored perfection, crisp white shirt, dark blazer stitched with the Stormbane crest, a silver wolf embroidered against black. Her stride was steady, her posture unwavering, as though she walked not through a school but through destiny itself. Beside her was always her shadow, though never in a lesser light, Maya Redwood. Maya's hair burned with the fire of autumn, long and flowing, her laughter wild and contagious. Her blue eyes sparkled with mischief and wit, and together with Iris, they became the pair everyone watched when they passed. Maya walked differently than Iris. If Iris moved like royalty, measured, precise, Maya moved like wildfire, her steps a little lighter, her gestures bigger, her voice carrying freely. She often threw her head back when she laughed, the sound bubbling out of her like music, loosening the stiffness that often clung to Lycan Ridge High's corridors. Trailing behind often was Selene Stormbane, Iris's younger sister. Selene was sweet, bright-eyed, and endlessly devoted to her elder sister. Though she was younger by only a couple of years, she clung to Iris's hand whenever she could, her admiration worn openly like a badge of honor. Selene adored watching Iris lead, adored how her sister's very presence seemed to steady the world around her. Selene, with her softer curls and gentler gaze, was warmth where Iris was steel. She was curious, her questions spilling endlessly, her kindness making her approachable where Iris's quiet strength often made her untouchable. The trio was inseparable, the Stormbane sisters and the Redwood Flame, the morning at Lycan Ridge High. The bell had not yet rung, and the courtyard was alive with chatter. Students gathered in small knots beneath the towering oaks, their voices carrying on the autumn wind. The leaves painted the ground in shades of red and gold, swirling across the cobblestones that lined the courtyard paths. Iris walked ahead, her gaze fixed on the grand wooden doors that led into the main hall. Her books were tucked neatly under her arm, but she carried them with a kind of ease, as though their weight was nothing. Maya swung hers carelessly, her laughter spilling as she teased Selene about the way her braid had come slightly undone. "Your hair is rebelling against you, Selene," Maya said with a grin, reaching out to tug playfully at a strand that had slipped loose. Selene swatted her hand away, cheeks flushed pink. "It's the wind," she protested, hastily tucking it back. "Besides, I don't have hair like yours. You just let it fly everywhere and it still looks perfect." "Perfect?" Maya tilted her head dramatically, her grin widening. "Did you hear that, Iris?" Selene admits she's jealous. Iris gave the faintest smile, small and fleeting, though enough to soften the sharpness of her eyes. Maya, stop tormenting her before she refuses to walk with us. She wouldn't dare, Maya replied, looping her arm around Selene's shoulders with exaggerated affection. Where else would she find better company? Selene giggled despite herself, leaning slightly into Maya's hold before slipping free to catch up to her sister. Iris's hand, steady and sure, found Selene's for a brief squeeze. It was a small gesture, almost hidden, but one that made Selene beam. The trio's presence in the courtyard did not go unnoticed. Heads turned, conversations paused. Some students whispered about Iris, about her family's power, about the Stormbane name that had been spoken in hushed tones for generations. Others looked at Maya, drawn in by her fire, the way she seemed to fill any space she entered. A few younger students smiled shyly at Selene, who always returned their greetings with warmth. It was not arrogance that made the three girls so visible. It was inevitability. They seemed to carry with them the weight of their houses, of their futures, of stories already written and those yet to unfold. Inside the halls, the bell finally rang, a deep chime that echoed through the stone. The flood of students moved toward the doors, and the trio stepped inside with the tide. The halls were lined with portraits. Headmasters, founding alpha, benefactors, champions of old duels. Their painted eyes followed the students, a reminder that history was always watching. The scent of polished wood and old books lingered in the air, mingling with the faint metallic tang that seemed to cling to Lycan Ridge High itself. Maya stretched her arms above her head as they walked, earning a disapproving glance from one of the older professors who passed by. "Do you think they'll make us duel in class again today?" she asked, her tone bright with anticipation. "Probably not," Iris replied, her voice calm, level. "The semester trials are still weeks away." Selene, however, perked up at the mention. "I hope we do. I've been practicing." Maya arched a brow at her. "Practicing? Don't tell me you've been sneaking out to spar with the seniors again." Selene's grin was guilty, her silence confirmation enough. Iris sighed softly, though there was no true anger in her tone. "Selene, you're supposed to be careful. You're not ready for matches against seniors." "I held my own," Selene argued, though she leaned closer to her sister as though seeking approval. Maya laughed, shaking her head. "One day, Iris, Selene's going to outshine both of us." Iris's lips curved ever so slightly. "Perhaps, but until then, she should remember that reckless courage and foolishness are not so different." The words were firm, but her hand brushed Selene's shoulder with quiet affection. Lunchtime rivalries. By midday, the grand dining hall buzzed with noise. Long tables stretched beneath the arched ceiling, chandeliers glittering overhead. Students clustered in their usual groups, each house marked by its crest pinned neatly to blazers. The Stormbane sisters and Maya took their usual spot near the center, where sunlight streamed through the high windows. Their table quickly drew attention, as it always did, friends stopping by to greet them, rivals glancing over with narrowed eyes. "Look who it is," a voice sneered from a nearby table. A boy with dark hair and a sharp jaw leaned back in his seat, his blazer marked with the crest of house, Veyron, a serpent coiled around a blade. His friends chuckled at his tone. The Stormbanes and their ever-faithful Redwood, the little queens of Lycan Ridge High. Maya didn't miss a beat. She leaned back, flashing him a grin sharp enough to cut. "And yet you can't seem to stop looking at us, Veyron. Careful. You'll wear out your neck." Laughter rippled around their table. The boy's smirk faltered, but he masked it quickly, muttering something under his breath as he turned back to his plate. Selene's wide eyes flicked to Iris, waiting to see her response. Iris simply continued eating, unbothered, her composure unshaken. Silence, as always, was her sharpest weapon. Maya nudged Selene playfully. "See? He can't touch us. Iris doesn't even need to waste her breath on him." Selene smiled faintly, relief warming her face. the quiet after. As the day waned, the trio found themselves outside once more, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The courtyard had quieted, most students already gone, but the three lingered. Maya perched on the edge of the fountain, trailing her fingers in the cool water. Selene sat beside her sister on the stone steps, her head resting against Iris's shoulder. Iris herself was silent, her storm-blue gaze fixed on the horizon, as though she saw more than the sunset, something deeper, something further. The world around them seemed to pause. In that moment, there was no weight of legacy, no rivalry, no whispering halls. There was only youth, bright, untamed, unbroken. The bloom of youth, fleeting and fierce, bound them together. And though the world would change, though shadows always lurked at the edges of power, here and now they were unshaken, the Stormbane sisters and the redwood flame, inseparable, unforgettable, unyielding. Chapter 22. The Weight of Legacy. The day began with history of the houses, the most dreaded subject by most of Lycan Ridge High. The class was held in a vaulted lecture hall where dust clung to shelves heavy with ancient tomes. A faint smell of parchment and candle wax hung in the air, though the chandeliers above cast steady golden light across rows of wooden desks. Professor Aldrich, stern and bearded, read in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. The Stormbane line, he intoned, stood as mediators during the schism of the Pacts, nearly 3 centuries ago. It was their intervention that prevented bloodshed between the Frostfang and Ashclaw houses. All heads turned, almost unconsciously, toward Iris. She kept her gaze lowered to her notes, her quill scratching neatly across the page. Her jaw was steady, though inside she felt the familiar twist, how every mention of her family's name became a mirror turned on her. A student at the back muttered under his breath, loud enough for a few to hear, "Of course they'll bring up Stormbane again," as if no one else ever mattered. Maya, who sat beside Iris, twisted in her seat to catch the boy's eye. She raised her brows and gave him such a sharp, dazzling grin that he quickly dropped his gaze. "Behave," Iris whispered under her breath, though a faint curve touched her lips. "Someone has to keep them in check," Maya replied softly, her blue eyes dancing with mischief. When class ended, students streamed out in chattering groups. Some lingered near Iris, asking her opinion on the lecture, pretending casual interest but hanging on to her every word. She answered politely, briefly, before slipping away with Maya and Selene close behind. Maya, meanwhile, navigated their shared world with wit sharp as a dagger. Where Iris was grace, Maya was fire. She cracked jokes that made even the strictest professors smile, broke rules with charm that left her unpunished, and stood fiercely by Iris's side whenever jealousy from others tried to rear its head. It showed most clearly during combat arts, held in the school's stone-walled arena. Wooden weapons clattered against each other as students paired off, the clash of training swords echoing beneath the high rafters. "Stormbane!" the instructor barked. "Pair with Veyron." The name stirred murmurs. Cassian Veyron, broad-shouldered and smug, with a serpent's smile. His family's crest gleamed silver on his dark blazer, and his eyes carried the weight of rivalry. Iris stepped forward, sword in hand, her stance calm and measured. Veyron smirked. "Oh, this is going to be fun, and don't expect me to go easy on you just because you're the darling of the professors." "I wouldn't expect it," Iris replied evenly. The match began. He swung first, sharp and fast, but Iris blocked with precision. Her movements were controlled, never reckless, her strikes calculated. Each clash of wood rang through the air, students circling to watch. It ended when Iris's sword swept his from his hands, sending it clattering across the floor. She stood still, weapon lowered, her expression composed. "Yield," she said simply. Veyron scowled, but muttered, "Yield." The instructor nodded approval, and whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. From the sidelines, Maya let out a low whistle. "And that's why no one should mess with Stormbane steel," she quipped, earning chuckles from nearby students. Later, as they left the arena, Maya bumped her shoulder lightly against Iris's. "You're too perfect sometimes," she teased, her grin sly. "You make the rest of us look like lazy slackers." "And you," Iris would reply with a small smile, "make sure no one forgets that rules are meant to be tested." Maya tilted her head proudly. "Exactly. Balance." Selene, often trailing them, would giggle. "I'm going to be just like both of you when I'm older." Her words came one afternoon, as the three walked the quiet upper halls, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows that painted the marble floors in hues of sapphire and crimson. Selene's eyes shone with open admiration, her smaller frame trotting to keep up with her sister and Maya's longer strides. Iris slowed, reaching down to smooth her little sister's hair with gentle fingers. "No, Selene," she said softly, her voice low enough to make the moment theirs alone. "You'll be even better." Selene's face glowed at the words, her smile radiant as she clung to her sister's arm. Evening in the courtyard. As the day drew to a close, the courtyard outside the school quieted. Students drifted away in clusters, laughter echoing down the stone paths. The fading light wrapped Lycan Ridge high in shades of amber and rose, the ivy along its walls darkening with shadow. The Stormbane sisters and Maya lingered beneath the great oak that stood at the courtyard's center, its branches spreading like arms across the sky. Maya stretched out on the low stone wall, hands folded behind her head, watching the clouds change color. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked suddenly. "About what?" Iris turned, her storm blue eyes steady. "The weight of it all, the names we carry, the way they look at you, like you're already halfway to becoming something larger than yourself." Iris was quiet for a moment, her gaze shifting to the horizon. "It doesn't matter what they see. What matters is what we choose to do." Maya let out a soft laugh, always the wise one. She sat up, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Good thing you have me to stir things up." "And me," Selene piped in, hugging her knees where she sat on the grass. "Yes," Iris said, her voice warm but laced with something deeper. "And you." For a long moment, the three of them sat in easy silence, the world slowing around them. The weight of legacy pressed heavy, yes, but it was shared, and in that sharing it became bearable. The storm would come one day, shadows would rise, rivalries would sharpen into battles. But for now, in the bloom of their youth, they were together, gold, flame, and light. And that was enough. Chapter 23. Meeting Christopher. It was in the great courtyard, where the fountain of Lycan Ridge's high-founding alpha roared day and night, that Iris first met Christopher Fisher Blackthorne. The courtyard was the heart of the academy, wide and open beneath the sky, framed by archways and stone carved, columns worn smooth by centuries of weather and footsteps. Students often lingered here in the moments between classes, gathering in clusters beneath the sprawling oaks or along the carved benches that circled the fountain. The fountain itself was a marvel, white marble, veined with silver, rising in the likeness of Lycan Ridge High's founding alpha. His massively large wolf-stone form stood tall and proud, water cascading from the tip of his raised sword into the wide basin below. The sound of the rushing water was constant, a reminder of heritage, of beginnings, of legacy. Iris had not been searching for anyone that day. Her arms were burdened with Selene's bag, far heavier than it had any right to be, and she was halfway through chastising her younger sister for vanishing during lunch when her gaze lifted. "Selene Stormbane," Iris muttered, adjusting the strap over her shoulder. "If you disappear one more time, I swear—" Her words faltered. He was there, leaning casually against the stone ledge of the fountain, his posture effortless yet commanding, stood Christopher Fisher Blackthorne. Christopher. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair tousled just enough to look natural, his sharp features softened by a smile that seemed to curve only for her. His eyes, storm gray but lit with a warmth rare in their depth, locked onto hers. For a moment, the bustling courtyard seemed to blur at the edges, the sound of voices fading into the steady roar of the fountain. The world had narrowed to two people. "Iris Stormbane," he said, his voice rich, steady, sure. It rolled across the courtyard with a calm that drew attention without force. "I've been waiting for the chance to introduce myself properly." Iris blinked, taken aback. Few dared to address her so directly. Most tiptoed around her presence, treating her with a cautious reverence. But this boy, this Blackthorne heir, spoke her name like it was something he had always known. "And what makes you think I want you to?" she replied, tilting her chin ever so slightly, her words laced with cool precision. Yet beneath it, a subtle lilt, playful, teasing. Christopher's smile deepened, though not arrogantly. He pushed away from the fountain's ledge and closed the distance by a single step. "Because," he said evenly, "I think you've already noticed me." From the corner of her eye, Iris saw Maya stifle a grin. Her fiery-haired friend let out a loud, theatrical snort before dragging Selene back a few steps. Selene, wide-eyed with curiosity, whispered something, and Maya leaned down to answer with a stage whisper, finally. Heat crept across Iris's face, though she masked it with a sharp glare at Maya. Her friend only raised her brows innocently and shrugged. Christopher chuckled softly. His voice like velvet brushed against stone. "Your friends seem to know me better than you'd like to admit." Iris folded her arms across Selene's bag, grounding herself. "You're very sure of yourself." "Not of myself," Christopher corrected gently. His gray eyes softened. "Of you." The words settled between them, unexpected and disarming. A new presence. From that day, something shifted in Iris's world. Christopher was simply there. In the library, where candlelight flickered over pages and the hush of parchment turning was broken only by distant footsteps, he would claim the seat beside her. He did not interrupt her studies with idle chatter. Instead, he matched her quiet focus, his notes steady, his handwriting precise. Occasionally, he would glance up, catch her eye across the desk, and give a small conspiratorial smile, as though sharing a secret only they knew. One afternoon, as Iris copied notes on the lineage of the founding packs, Christopher leaned slightly toward her, voice low. "You always underline when something matters," he murmured, eyes flicking to her neatly drawn line beneath a passage. "And you always doodle in the margins when you're pretending not to be bored," Iris countered, glancing at the sketch of a wolf's head at the corner of his page. He grinned, unbothered. "Caught." Her lips twitched before she could stop them. In the corridors, he matched his pace to hers, unhurried, steady. Students noticed, of course. Whispers followed them. Stormbane and Blackthorne, heirs of one of the most powerful families in Lycan Ridge City, walking side by side. One day, as they passed beneath the portraits of long-dead alphas, Maya fell back a step with Selene and smirked. "Careful, Iris, people are going to think you like him." "People think too much already," Iris replied coolly. But her gaze drifted forward, to Christopher, who walked just ahead with his hands in his pockets, waiting for her to catch up. Selene giggled, tugging Maya's sleeve. "She does like him." "Of course she does," Maya whispered back, loud enough for Iris to hear. "She's just the last one to admit it." Iris shot them both a look that should have frozen them in place. Instead, Maya only grinned wider, and Selene bit her lip, hiding her smile. Lunch across the table. At lunch, where long tables stretched beneath the vaulted dining hall, Christopher somehow always found his way to her side. He did not crowd her, nor make a spectacle of it. He simply sat across from her, his storm-gray gaze attentive as they spoke. Many sought Iris's favor. students eager to attach themselves to the Stormbane name. They brought her gifts of notes, invitations, and compliments dressed as conversation. Yet Iris noticed quickly, Christopher was different. He never praised her for her heritage, never bowed beneath the weight of her family's crest. He spoke to her, not the Stormbane heir. "You always finish your meal last," he observed one afternoon, watching as she methodically cut into her bread after most of the table had already risen. "And you always notice the smallest things," she replied without looking up. He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I notice you most." Maya groaned dramatically from beside her, flopping onto the table. "I'm begging you to. At least wait until I've finished eating before you start reciting poetry at each other." Selene's giggles joined the hum of voices, and even Iris couldn't stop the warmth rising in her cheeks, the unseen steadiness. Days folded into weeks and Iris felt it, the change. Christopher's presence steadied her in ways she had not anticipated. When professors pressed her with expectations, when students whispered about her every move, it was Christopher who quietly leveled the balance. He admired her not for her name, but for her heart, for the way she defended a younger student during sparring practice when others mocked his clumsy form, for the honesty in her answers when silence would have been easier, for her refusal to turn her head when someone needed help. "I like that about you," he told her one evening as they walked the courtyard at dusk, the fountain roaring behind them. "What?" she asked, keeping her eyes forward, though her pulse quickened. "You don't do the right thing for appearances. You do it because it's who you are." Iris hesitated, her breath catching for a moment. "And that makes you notice me?" He looked at her then, storm-gray eyes steady as the stone walls surrounding them. "That makes me fall for you." The words were quiet, firm, unshaken. And Iris realized quickly, painfully, beautifully. She was falling too. Chapter 24. Maya's Own Flame. Around the same time, Maya found herself entangled with someone who matched her fire with equal measure, Damien Silverfang. Damien was the kind of boy who made girls blush when he walked by. His smirk was trouble, his voice smooth as silk, and his charm effortless. But it was Maya who snared his attention. Their banter was electric from the start. "You think you're clever, Redwood?" Damien asked one afternoon as she outsmarted him during a debate in class. "I don't think, Silverfang," Maya replied, her eyes flashing. "I know." And from then on they were inseparable. He adored her wild laughter, her unapologetic boldness, her refusal to ever let him win without a fight. Maya, in turn, discovered in Damien a loyalty that ran deeper than the silver charm he wore like armor. When she finally confided to Iris about him, her cheeks flushed pink for the first time in her life. "I think I love him," Maya whispered. Iris only squeezed her hand, smiling with her whole heart. "Then I'll love him too, for you." But before that whispered confession, their story unfolded like a flame catching on dry kindling, fast, hot, impossible to ignore. It began in the lecture hall, where sunlight slanted through the tall windows and cast shifting patterns on the wooden desks. Professor Alder had assigned the students into debate pairs, and fate, or perhaps sheer mischief, had paired Maya Redwood with Damien Silverfang. The topic, strength versus cunning in pack leadership. Maya had leaned back in her chair, twirling her quill with a smirk. "This will be too easy." Damien, lounging across from her with all the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no, raised a brow. "You think cunning alone keeps a pack alive? Without strength, leaders are nothing more than schemers hiding behind sharper wolves." "Without cunning," Maya countered smoothly, "strength is wasted on battles that never should have been fought." The class had gone still, every student watching them volley words like blades. Their energy was magnetic, each quip sharper than the last, sparks flying until even Professor Alder finally cut in with a strained cough. "I think we've all learned enough from that exchange," he muttered, though the ghost of a smile tugged at his lips. When class ended, Damien had lingered by the door waiting for her. "You fight dirty, Redwood," he said, falling into step beside her. Maya tossed her braid over her shoulder and smirked. "You'd know if I did." His laugh was low, rich, undeniably amused, and from that day forward, he was never far from her side. They clashed in training sparring sessions too, though neither ever admitted just how much they looked forward to those matches. On the packed dirt of the training grounds, surrounded by the shouts of others testing their strength, Damien would circle her like a wolf stalking prey, while Maya held her ground, chin high, eyes blazing. "You'll tire eventually," he taunted, twirling the wooden staff in his hands. "Keep dreaming," Maya shot back, lunging forward. Their staffs cracked together with a resounding thud, the vibration rattling up their arms. The crowd that gathered loved it. Maya's speed against Damien's power, wit against grit. No one could predict who would win, and neither seemed willing to ever let the other claim victory. When Maya finally disarmed him one afternoon with a clever feint, she planted her staff against his chest and grinned. "Say it." "Say what?" he asked, feigning innocence, though his chest heaved with exertion. "That I won." Damien's lips curved into a sly smile. He stepped closer, pressing against the staff until she was forced to retreat half a step. "You may have won the fight," he murmured, his stormy eyes glittering with amusement, "but I'll win the war." For once, Maya faltered, just for a heartbeat, before shoving him back with a laugh. "We'll see, Silverfang." It wasn't just the sparring, though. Damien followed her into the library, sitting far too close for someone who claimed he needed help with his assignments. "You don't even read the notes I give you," Maya accused one evening, glaring at his empty parchment. "I read them," Damien said smoothly, leaning back in his chair. "I just prefer hearing you explain it. You make even history sound interesting." Maya rolled her eyes, but her cheeks warmed. She ducked her head to hide the smile threatening to escape. Later, when she looked up from her books, she found him watching her, not with his usual smirk, not with that mischievous gleam, but with something softer, steadier. "What?" she demanded, uneasy under the weight of his gaze. "Nothing," he said, his lips quirking, "just wondering how someone can burn so brightly without setting the whole world on fire." Maya's heart stuttered. She shoved his notebook at him. "Focus, Silverfang." There were nights, too, when they slipped away from the noise of the academy. Beneath a wide expanse of stars, they walked along the old stone walls that marked the edge of the grounds. Damien tossed a pebble into the darkness. "Do you ever think about leaving all this behind? The politics, the expectations, the weight of names like ours?" Maya tilted her head, studying him. "Every day." He gave a short laugh, but it lacked humor. "Funny. Everyone thinks I've got it all figured out, that I'm proud of being a Silverfang. But some nights, I'd trade it for the freedom you wear like armor." Maya's chest tightened. She bumped his shoulder lightly. "Careful, Damien. Keep talking like that and I might think you actually have a soul under all that swagger." His grin returned, crooked and genuine. "Only you get to see it, Redwood." And so it went. Fire meeting fire, banter giving way to something deeper. He adored her wild laughter, her unapologetic boldness, her refusal to ever let him win without a fight. Maya, in turn, discovered in Damien a loyalty that ran deeper than the silver charm he wore like armor. He was always there when she needed him, often before she even asked. When a group of older students cornered her after a heated exchange in class, Damien appeared out of nowhere, sliding between them with a calm, dangerous smile that promised consequences if they laid a finger on her. "You've got terrible timing," Maya muttered afterward, though her voice shook only slightly. "Perfect timing," Damien corrected, brushing dirt from her sleeve with surprising gentleness. "Always." When she finally confided to Iris about him, her cheeks flushed pink for the first time in her life. They were sitting in Iris's dorm room late at night, the lamp casting warm light across scattered books. Selene was asleep in the adjoining room, leaving them in rare quiet. Maya fiddled with the edge of her sleeve, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I think I love him," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. Iris set her book aside, eyes widening slightly. For Maya Redwood, bold and brash and fearless, to admit such a thing, it was no small confession. A slow smile spread across Iris's face, warm and proud. She reached across the bed and squeezed Maya's hand. "Then I'll love him too, for you." Maya laughed softly, though her eyes shimmered. For once, she didn't have a clever retort. That night, long after Iris had fallen asleep, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her heart beat too fast, too loud. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she had finally found the one person who could match her flame without ever trying to dim it. And though she'd never admit it aloud, the thought both terrified and thrilled her. Chapter 25. Double dates and shared dreams. The four of them quickly became a sight around Lycan Ridge High. Iris and Christopher, Maya and Damien. Two couples that seemed to balance each other like night and day. It was impossible not to notice them when they walked through the arched stone corridors or across the sunlit courtyards. Iris with her grace, Christopher with his steady confidence, Maya with her wild fire, Damien with his easy swagger. They looked like a portrait in motion, a living emblem of youth's bloom and promise. Teachers nodded approvingly, other students whispered in awe or envy, and even the portraits of the long-dead alphas hanging on the walls seemed to watch them with a kind of silent recognition. They went on outings together. The horseback rides through the Stormbane estates became their favorite pastime. The vast land stretched in rolling fields and forests of oak and pine, where sunlight spilled in golden sheets over the meadows. Iris's mare, Snow Glimmer, was a proud white creature that matched her rider's elegance, while Christopher favored a tall black stallion, a beast with strength to rival his own. Maya, of course, rode recklessly on a copper-gold horse named Ember, who seemed as fiery as his rider, while Damien kept pace on a chestnut warhorse, his grin wide whenever Maya's daring jumps over fallen logs left her hair flying. "Try not to break your neck, Redwood," Damien shouted once as Maya urged Ember toward a narrow stream. "Try not to eat my dust, Silverfang," she hollered back, laughter spilling into the wind. Iris rode behind with Christopher, shaking her head with fond exasperation. Selene, perched on a pony and trailing behind under the careful eye of a guard, clapped her hands at every daring leap Maya took. "You're supposed to be setting a good example," Iris called out. Maya turned, grinning wickedly. "Oh, I am. I'm showing everyone how to live." Damien caught up to her, leaning low in his saddle to whisper something that made Maya laugh so hard she almost dropped her reins. Iris exchanged a look with Christopher, who only chuckled softly. "They're impossible," Iris muttered. "And perfect for each other," Christopher replied, his eyes warm as he reached over to steady Iris's reins. Their days were not all wild rides. There were gentler moments, too, picnics by the crystal blue lakes of Redwood Territory, where the water mirrored the sky so clearly it seemed the world had no bottom. On those afternoons they laid blankets over the grass, baskets filled with fruit, fresh bread, and cheeses spread between them. Maya sprawled with her head on Damien's lap, plucking strawberries from the basket only to smear juice across his jaw playfully. "Uncalled for," Damien protested, though his smirk betrayed him. "You wear red well," Maya teased, licking her finger, "like war paint." Damien caught her wrist before she could reach for another berry, tugging her down for a kiss. She squealed, trying to fight him off, but her laughter carried across the lake shore. Meanwhile, Iris sat with her knees tucked to her chest, Selene nestled against her side, and Christopher stretched, out nearby, half reclining on one arm as he watched her. He never said much during those moments, but Iris always caught the way his gaze lingered on her, thoughtful and unshaken, as though she was the center of every horizon. You stare too much, she murmured once, embarrassed by the heat rising in her cheeks. Christopher tilted his head slightly, his smile tugging slow and sure at the corner of his lips. Then stop giving me a reason to. Her heart thumped in her chest, and she had to look away, pressing her face into Selene's hair to hide her blush. Then there were the stolen evenings when they snuck away to the cinema in the city, slipping into the velvet-draped seats of the back row. The cinema was small, but the flickering screen lit their faces in silver light, and laughter bubbled from Maya the moment a dramatic chase scene unfolded. She stuffed popcorn into Damien's mouth when he tried to shush her, and he retaliated by stealing her soda. I swear, Iris whispered with a sigh, though her lips curved into a smile. Those two could cause trouble even in an empty room. Christopher leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. And would you really want them any other way? Iris pretended to think for a moment before shaking her head softly. No, not at all. In that hushed theater, with the flicker of light dancing across their faces, she felt his fingers brush against hers in the dark. Slowly, almost shyly, she let her hand rest in his. One summer evening, they sprawled together on the roof of the Blackthorn Manor, staring up at the stars. The manor itself was a fortress of history, its roof sloping wide enough for them to lie side by side with a basket of leftover snacks between them. The air was warm, scented faintly with lilacs from the gardens below, and fireflies flickered in the distance like tiny stars that had descended to dance among the hedges. Selene had dozed off against Iris's arm, her soft breathing steady, while the others talked about the future. Iris will be Luna, Maya said confidently, her voice ringing with pride. She's born for it. Christopher's hand tightened gently over Iris's. Not just born for it, she's going to change everything. I believe in her. Iris flushed, hiding her face in her hair, but her heart hammered at his words. She wasn't used to such unshakable faith spoken aloud. For a moment she almost dared to believe it herself. And you? Iris teased, turning to Maya. What will you and Damien do? Maya smirked, leaning back against Damien's chest. Rule Redwood with fire and laughter. He doesn't know it yet, but I'll be making all the decisions. Damien chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. I already knew. I'm just here for the charm. The group burst into laughter, their voices echoing into the summer night. Even Selene stirred, half awake, murmuring sleepily, Don't laugh so loud. Before drifting off again, Damien plucked a star-shaped leaf from the roof tiles and held it up to the night sky, as though comparing it to the constellations. You know, he said, his voice unusually thoughtful, when we were kids, I used to think the stars were sparks from battles fought by wolves in the heavens. Every night, more sparks, more proof of their fights. Maya tilted her head, studying him. That's unexpectedly poetic, Silverfang. I didn't know you had that in you. Damien shrugged, smirking, but his hand tightened around hers. Maybe I save my best for you. For once, Maya didn't tease him. She only squeezed his hand back. Christopher spoke next, his voice low but certain. I don't know what the future looks like exactly, but I know I want it with all of you in it. Iris turned to him, searching his expression. He met her gaze with such sincerity that it made her chest ache. She whispered, almost too softly, So do I. The laughter softened then, giving way to quiet. They lay together in that hush, stars wheeling above, hearts bound by the invisible thread of shared dreams. For that moment, it felt as though the world was perfect, 4 hearts beating in rhythm, dreams bound together by love, family, and loyalty. Theirs was a season of joy, of blooming youth. A season when love was new and pure, when the burdens of leadership were far in the distance, and when Iris Stormbane and Maya Redwood, with Selene always looking on, carved memories that would linger like ghosts through the halls of time. Memories that would one day hurt to remember, but for now glowed like summer itself. warm, fleeting, and golden. Chapter 26. Crossroads of Loyalty. The autumn air in Lycan Ridge had a crisp bite to it that year, the kind that stung the lungs but sharpened the senses. Maple leaves carpeted the walkways in shades of orange and scarlet, crunching beneath sneakers and boots as students made their way across campus. From the Stormbane Estate's chimneys, faint wood smoke drifted on the breeze, mingling with the smell of damp grass and freshly sharpened pencils from the school supply store nearby. The school year was drawing to its end, but for Iris Stormbane, every day carried a heavier weight than the last. Expectations pressed against her shoulders like invisible chains. She was the heir. The Stormbane name carried with it power, dignity, legacy. Admired for her beauty, envied for her composure, whispered about in hallways she pretended not to hear. But no amount of whispered rumors, parental guidance, or practiced grace had prepared her for the storm gathering on the horizon. A storm that had a name: Cross Redwood, a forbidden spark. It happened one golden afternoon. The sun streamed lazily across the courtyard of Lycan Ridge High, glinting off the fountain in the center, the one with the carved wolf statue of the founding Alpha, water spraying in arcs that caught the light like shattered glass. Iris walked along the stone path, her arms full of books, her sleek black leather bag slung across her shoulder. At her side, Selene skipped in her white sneakers, humming off-key to a song she'd heard on the radio that morning. Maya Redwood, never one for quiet, chattered beside them, her hands flying through the air as she reenacted her latest debate with Damien Silverfang. And then he actually had the nerve to claim my statistics were outdated, Maya scoffed, tossing her auburn hair back with a flick. Outdated? Can you believe? She broke off mid-sentence, because he was there. Cross Redwood. He stepped into their path like he'd been waiting for the exact moment to intercept. The autumn light caught on his dark leather jacket, the kind every boy thought was rebellious but only Cross made look dangerous. His dark hair fell just enough to shadow his eyes, but not enough to soften them. And those eyes, sharp, unrelenting, fixed on Iris with a hunger that made Selene instinctively reach for her sister's arm. He was nothing like Damien or Christopher. Where Damien's grin charmed and Christopher's quiet strength steadied, Cross carried something darker, untamed, raw, like every breath he took was a dare to the world. Iris Stormbane. His voice rolled low, smooth, deliberate. You should know by now. You belong with someone who won't hide behind diplomacy. Iris froze mid-step. Her chin lifted an inch, her blue eyes narrowing. She had learned long ago not to let her nerves show. And that would be you, I assume? Cross smirked, slow and deliberate, closing the distance between them by a step. His presence was magnetic, the kind that suffocated if you let it. I don't assume, Iris. His words laced the air with quiet threat. I promise. One day I'll mark you, and when I do... His gaze flickered briefly to Maya and Selene, then back. Stormbane and Redwood will finally belong together, under my hand. Selene gasped audibly, her little fingers clenching tighter around Iris's sleeve. Maya stiffened, her usual witty comebacks caught in her throat. But Iris refused to flinch. She straightened her shoulders, steel in her voice. You presume too much, Cross Redwood. The clash. For a heartbeat, silence held. The fountain spray hissed against the stone. Students nearby slowed their steps, pretending to scroll through their phones, but their ears angled sharply toward the scene. And then, step back. The words cut the air like a blade. Christopher Blackthorn's voice carried across the courtyard, deep and commanding, even though it was spoken softly. He strode forward with a presence that drew eyes instantly. His storm-gray eyes had narrowed, his jaw locked tight. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to be performed. It was simply who he was. At once, the atmosphere shifted. Cross tilted his head lazily toward him, but the smirk never faded. "Ah, the Blackthorn Prince," he drawled, the title dripping sarcasm. "Here to protect her honor?" Christopher's steps didn't falter. He stopped just beside Iris, his hand brushing her elbow briefly, a silent reassurance before fixing Cross with a gaze sharp enough to slice stone. "If you ever think of touching her, or speak of marking her again, you'll regret it." His voice had dropped to a growl, quiet but carrying across the courtyard like thunder rolling low and dangerous. Cross's eyes glimmered. Not fear, never fear, but something colder. Challenge. His smirk softened, turned razor sharp. "I don't back down, Blackthorn," Cross murmured. "Not from you, not from anyone." His gaze flicked briefly to Iris, lingered there like a brand, and certainly not when it comes to her. Students nearby shifted uneasily, whispering in frantic undertones, phones subtly raised as if trying to catch video without being noticed. Selene, sensing the brewing storm, tugged gently on Iris's sleeve, whispering, "Let's just go, please." But Iris's feet were rooted. She stood between them, the man she loved, the man who steadied her heart, and the man who threatened to tear it apart with nothing more than a promise. For a long taut moment, silence pressed heavy, and then Cross leaned back slightly, rolling his shoulders with infuriating ease. His smirk turned almost casual, though his eyes never lost their fire. "Then it seems," he said quietly, almost conversationally, "you and I will never know peace." He stepped back at last, his boots crunching over the fallen leaves. But his gaze lingered on Iris until the very last second, a silent vow that his words weren't empty. When he finally turned and walked away, the courtyard exhaled all at once. Aftermath. Maya immediately rounded on Iris. "Are you kidding me? Cross Redwood? Of all people!" "I didn't do anything," Iris snapped, her composure cracking. "He approached me." Christopher's hand remained firm on her arm, grounding her, though his expression was unreadable. His jaw was still tight, his storm-gray eyes still locked on the space Cross had vacated. Selene's voice trembled softly. He sounded like he meant it, Iris, and Iris for once didn't know what to say, because she knew he did. Chapter 27. A Vow in Shadows. The night pressed close against the Stormbane estate, the wide windows reflecting only darkness. Outside, the woods stretched endless and black, their branches swaying in the autumn wind, scattering leaves across the gravel driveway. The house itself was quiet now, too quiet, its usual hum of life muted as if the walls themselves sensed the unease lingering in Iris Stormbane's heart. She sat before the tall mirror in her room, a silver-backed brush moving absently through her long blonde hair. The golden strands caught the glow of the desk lamp beside her, each motion a steady rhythm meant to calm her thoughts. But tonight, no rhythm, no routine could quiet her mind. Cross's words still echoed like a whisper against her ear. "One day, I'll mark you." The audacity of it, the weight of it, the dangerous certainty beneath his tone that told her this was no empty threat. Cross Redwood had planted a seed of promise, and she hated herself for knowing, deep down, that he wouldn't let it wither. On the bed behind her, Selene lay curled in her favorite blanket, a hardcover novel propped open in her lap. She was trying to read, her lips moving faintly over the words, but her eyes flicked up every other minute to watch Iris. The younger girl's instincts were sharp, almost painfully so. She could sense the heaviness Iris carried like a storm cloud, even when Iris tried to mask it behind poise and grace. Finally, Selene closed the book and broke the silence. "He meant it," she whispered, her voice fragile but firm. "He's dangerous, Iris. I don't like him." The brush paused mid-stroke. Iris met her sister's reflection in the mirror. Selene's small face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination that always reminded Iris of their mother in her fiercest moments. Iris sighed, setting the brush gently on the vanity. She turned slightly, resting her hands in her lap. Selene, danger is everywhere in families like ours. You'll see it 100 times over before you're grown. Cross is complicated. Her tone softened, though her jaw stayed tense. But I won't let him threaten me, or you. Do you understand? Selene sat up straighter, clutching the blanket like armor. You always say that, she said, her voice gaining strength. That you'll protect me. But what if he doesn't play by the rules? What if he doesn't care about promises or boundaries? He's a redwood, Iris. You know what they're like. Her words struck like a blade. There was truth in them. Truth Iris didn't want to admit. The Redwood family was infamous for pushing limits, bending laws, grasping power where others hesitated. Cross was no exception. If anything, he embodied it. Iris crossed the room and sat on the edge of Selene's bed, brushing a strand of hair away from her sister's face. That's why I'll stay ahead of him. That's why I'll be careful. And that's why... She leaned closer, her blue eyes steady. You don't need to carry this weight. Let me carry the burden, Selene. You just focus on being yourself. Selene shook her head stubbornly. But I'll remember. I won't forget what he said. A tired smile ghosted over Iris's lips. She bent and kissed her sister's forehead, lingering there for a moment. Then remember if you must. But don't let it harden you. Don't let him take away your light. Selene's gaze didn't waver. For all her youth, she had a steel in her iris both admired and feared. I won't, she said softly, but I'll remember. Always, the quiet after. Later, when Selene finally drifted to sleep, Iris remained awake, sitting by the window. She pulled the curtains back just enough to look out at the darkened driveway and the stretch of forest beyond. Her phone buzzed once on the desk, a message from Christopher. Are you okay? Iris hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. She could almost see him, waiting with that patient intensity in his storm-gray eyes, ready to come if she needed him. But she didn't type the truth. Instead, she wrote, I'm fine, don't worry. She set the phone aside and leaned her head against the cool glass. Fine. She had to be fine. Because if she wasn't, if she admitted the fear curling inside her chest, it would make Cross's words real. Iris's thoughts stayed tangled in the courtyard. Cross's voice, Selene's gasp, Christopher's protective growl. She pressed her palms together tightly, whispering into the shadows as if making a vow. He won't win. Not over me. Not over us. Her own reflection in the glass met her words with unflinching eyes. And yet, even as she swore it, Iris knew the night had changed something. Cross Redwood's vow was not one that would fade with time. It would grow, it would haunt. And somewhere deep inside her, though she hated herself for it, a part of her wondered what it would mean if he truly tried to claim her. Selene's secret resolve across the room. Selene stirred in her sleep, whispering words too faint to hear. Her small hand clutched the blanket as though holding on to her vow even in dreams. Because Iris didn't know it yet, but Selene's memory was iron. She wouldn't just remember Cross's words. She would carry them like a secret ledger, every slight, every threat, every promise. And when the time came, Selene Stormbane would not forget. Chapter 28. A Surprising Kindness. The days following Cross Redwood's vow were not what Iris expected. She thought he would escalate. More challenges in the courtyard, more heated stares across the dining hall, more whispered threats on the edges of her world. But instead, something shifted. The storm she braced herself for never quite arrived. At least, not in the form she imagined. Cross Redwood didn't vanish, nor did he relent. He was there, always there, but not as the menace he had been before. He lingered at the edges, slipping into moments she didn't invite yet couldn't ignore. One morning, Iris dropped her notebook and pen after a late study night had left her clumsy. The marble floor of the corridor was crowded with shuffling students, and she sighed, bending down to collect them. Before her hand could reach the scattered pages, another hand beat her to it. She looked up, expecting Christopher. Instead, Cross knelt there, holding out the notebook with a slight smirk tugging at his lips. His eyes were sharp, but not mocking, not this time. "You should hold tighter," he said lightly, his tone bordering on playful. "Wouldn't want your secrets spilled across the hallway." Iris straightened, taking the book carefully from his grasp, her expression guarded. "My secrets aren't yours to worry about, Cross." He tilted his head, standing with unhurried grace. "I didn't say I was worried, just observant. And perhaps our first introduction had started off heated. I would like to begin anew." And before she could reply, he turned, blending into the crowd with an ease that unsettled her. The next week, it happened again, this time in the dining hall. Maya had been bantering with Damien across the table, Selene perched beside Iris, her fork twirling absent-mindedly in her salad. The air was loud with laughter, conversations bouncing between tables. When Maya went to sit, her chair scraped awkwardly against the floor. Before she could reach down to adjust it, a hand pulled it smoothly back for her. Maya blinked, startled. Damien leaned forward in immediate suspicion, his arm draping protectively across the back of her chair. But the hand belonged to Cross, who had stepped in without a word, his expression unreadable. "Careful, Redwood," Maya muttered under her breath, bristling. Cross's lips curved into that same practiced smirk. "Just being a gentleman. Don't tell me you're not used to it." Maya's cheeks flushed with irritation, but Iris caught something else in his face, a flicker of sincerity, quickly masked. It confused her. It unsettled her. It made her wonder what he wanted. The unexpected defense. In class, it was even stranger. Shifter law was never Iris's favorite subject. Its endless lists of traditions, treaties, and conflicts felt like balancing on a knife's edge between history and politics. Professor Callahan, strict as ever, quizzed them mercilessly, his voice booming across the room. "Stormbane," he barked one morning, adjusting his glasses. "What are the 3 binding conditions of the Alpha Treaty of 1822? Iris began to recite, but Callahan cut her off with a dismissive wave. "Too slow. If you hesitate, you fail. That hesitation costs lives." The class murmured, tension thick. Iris clenched her jaw, fighting the heat creeping into her cheeks. She rarely faltered under pressure, but exhaustion had dragged at her all week. Before she could speak again, another voice rang out. "Professor," Cross said from the back row, his tone sharp and cutting. She answered correctly. "If you're going to punish anyone, punish me." I wasn't paying attention. The room went still, students exchanged wide-eyed glances. Callahan's gaze snapped toward him, his brow furrowing. "Is this a joke, Redwood?" Cross leaned back in his chair, utterly relaxed. "Not a joke, just truth. Some of us hesitate because we don't care." Iris hesitated because she actually listens. She cares. Isn't that the point of leadership? Callahan bristled, but the weight of the words lingered. After a long silence, he turned away. "Sit down, both of you. Class dismissed." Iris sat frozen in her chair, the weight of Cross's defense pressing into her chest. Later, as they spilled into the hallway, Maya hissed, "What was that?" Cross passed by with a shrug. "Respect where it's due. Even Stormbanes need it." His smirk flickered, but for once his eyes were not mocking. Iris caught herself staring, unsettled by the warmth hidden beneath his sharp edges. The walk home. It was after that lecture that he fell into step beside her. The campus buzzed with end-of-day chatter, autumn leaves crunching underfoot as students scattered toward their cars and buses. Selene had already darted ahead to meet a friend, and Maya lingered with Damien, leaving Iris walking alone for once. Christopher was called home too soon. "You're different than the others," Cross said suddenly. His voice was quieter this time, stripped of arrogance. "You actually listen. You care." Iris slowed, her brows furrowing. "That doesn't mean we're friends." Cross's smirk flickered, softer than the one he usually wore, almost hesitant. "Maybe not. but it doesn't mean we're enemies either." Iris studied him in the fading light, the way the shadows clung to his sharp jawline, the way his eyes, dark but not empty, watched her without the usual edge of challenge. And for the briefest moment she wondered if there was something beneath all that bravado, something raw, hidden, almost human. But then Selene's voice called her name from ahead, breaking the moment. Iris straightened her shoulders, her mask slipping back into place. "Truces don't last forever, Cross." He only smiled faintly. "No, but sometimes they change everything." Unspoken tensions. At lunch one morning, Christopher noticed the weight in Iris's silence. He asked twice if she was all right, his storm-gray eyes searching her face for cracks. She told him she was fine, that she was tired. But Selene, sitting close, shifted uneasily. She hadn't forgotten the courtyard vow. She hadn't forgotten Cross's promise. And now, she wouldn't forget this strange truce either. The uneasy balance. The weeks slipped by, carrying this fragile, confusing rhythm with them. Cross Redwood no longer stormed her path with declarations. Instead, he carved himself into the edges of her days, a constant reminder that not all enemies arrive with claws bared. And Iris Stormbane, despite herself, began to wonder which was more dangerous, his vow of unrest or his surprising kindness. Chapter 29. Maya's Apology. The autumn evenings at Lycan Ridge High had their own kind of magic. The air carried a faint bite, sharp enough to make students pull their jackets tighter but soft enough to remind them that winter had not yet claimed the world. Golden leaves swirled down from the sprawling oak at the center of campus, the old tree that had stood watch over generations of pack heirs and scholars. Beneath its branches, the ground was carpeted with a mosaic of amber and rust, crunching faintly when the wind shifted them. It was here, beneath the oak's great limbs, that Iris Stormbane and Maya Redwood found a rare pocket of quiet. Their books were spread across the roots like careless offerings to the tree, and the world around them seemed to hush as if waiting for something unspoken. Maya's usual voice, bright, teasing, filled with playful wit, was absent. Instead, she sat with her knees drawn up, fiddling endlessly with a strand of her vibrant red hair. Her freckles stood out against the pallor of her cheeks, and though she tried to meet Iris's gaze, her green eyes kept slipping away, guilt clouding their brightness. "I'm sorry for him," she whispered finally, as though speaking Cross's name aloud might disturb the fragile calm of the evening. Her voice trembled around the edges, and for once, Maya Redwood, the girl who never backed down from an argument, sounded uncertain, almost small. Iris shifted slightly, her long blonde hair spilling over her shoulder as she turned. There was no anger in her posture, no sharpness in her gaze, only patience, the quiet strength she always seemed to carry. "For him?" she asked softly, though she already knew who Maya meant. Maya nodded, still twisting her strand of hair. "Cross, he doesn't think before he speaks. He's ruthless, Iris, I know that. He always has been. But you need to understand, his side of the family, the Redwood branch he comes from, they've always carried a grudge against my father. They think they should have ruled outright, that they should have been the dominant house. To him, you're not just Iris. You're Stormbane. And that makes you..." Her voice faltered, an air of a rival house. The wind stirred, sending a flurry of leaves scattering across their shoes. Iris studied her friend carefully. She had expected many things from Maya, a defense, perhaps, or silence. But this vulnerability cut deeper than any confrontation could. Tilting her head slightly, Iris's blue eyes softened. "And you?" she asked quietly. "Do you feel the same?" Maya's answer came before Iris even finished the question. She shook her head violently, red hair whipping around her face. "No, never." Her hands tightened into fists in her lap, as if holding the words in place. "My father's the rightful alpha of Redwood, And I don't care about Cross's grudges or his schemes. I don't care what his side of the family whispers in their halls. You're my best friend, Iris. You've been there for me when no one else understood what it meant to grow up with this much expectation on our shoulders. I'll never let family politics come between us." The raw honesty in her tone struck Iris like a chord. For a moment she saw not the daughter of Redwood, but simply Maya, her best friend, her confidant, the girl who would laugh at her mistakes in chemistry class, and then defend her fiercely when anyone else dared to mock her. Iris reached over, her slender hand sliding across the rough bark of the oak's root until it found Maya's. She squeezed gently, her lips curving into a smile that was both reassuring and touched with sadness. "Then let it rest," Iris murmured. "Cross may be who he is, but I won't let them poison what we have." Maya's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, reflecting the lantern glow from the nearby walkway. She exhaled shakily, as though Iris's words had loosened a chain around her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, the relief spilling into her voice. For a heartbeat, it felt as if the air itself had lightened, as though the oak above them had accepted their vow of friendship and granted its silent blessing. But then, a smaller voice broke through the quiet. "You may have forgiven what he said, but I won't." Both Iris and Maya turned sharply. Selene sat a few feet away, perched cross-legged on the grass with her sketchbook open across her knees. She had been so quiet, pencil gliding over the page, that they had almost forgotten she was there. The lamplight caught her golden hair and lit her young features, but there was nothing soft in her expression. Her sapphire blue eyes were narrowed, sharp with conviction that seemed far older than her years. The firmness in her tone startled them both. Iris blinked, caught between exasperation and pride. "Selene," she began gently, but Selene did not look away. She held her sister's gaze with all the fierce devotion of a younger sibling who had made up her mind. "He threatened you," she said, her voice steady, calm, and yet edged like steel. "He spoke about marking you, about owning you. I don't care if he helps you pick up books or smiles in class. I don't care if he apologizes someday. I won't forgive him for what he said." The silence that followed was heavy. The breeze whispered through the oak's branches, carrying with it the faint scent of damp leaves and wood smoke, but none of them moved. Maya's lips parted, guilt etching deep lines across her face. "Selene, he—" Selene snapped her sketchbook shut with a sharp clap, her small hands trembling only slightly as she hugged it against her chest. "No, Maya, you don't get to excuse him. You can apologize for him if you want, but I don't accept it. People show you who they are the first time. Cross showed us, and I'll remember." Her words were quiet, but they hit harder than a shout. Maya looked away, staring at the grass as if it might swallow her. The red in her hair seemed to glow under the lamplight, but all the fire in her personality had dimmed under Selene's unwavering certainty. Iris reached for her sister, her smile soft but touched with that shadow that always lingered when she thought of Cross. She brushed her fingers over Selene's hand. "Then let me carry the burden," she whispered. "You just focus on being yourself." Selene shook her head, her eyes still locked on Iris's, filled with something unshakable. "No, I'll remember, I promise." And Iris knew. Once Selene etched something into her heart, it never faded. The three of them sat beneath the oak as the night deepened, each lost in their own thoughts. The lanterns glowed softly, footsteps of passing students echoed in the distance, and the campus continued its quiet rhythm. Yet, in the shadow of that tree, a vow had been made, one of friendship, one of apology, and one of defiance. And Iris couldn't help but feel that in the years to come it would be Selene's vow, not Maya's apology, that would echo loudest in their lives. Chapter 30. The Uneasy Peace. The months that followed blurred into a rhythm that felt both ordinary and unbearably fragile. The chill of autumn gave way to the brittle cold of winter, and soon enough the first signs of spring began to creep into Lycan Ridge High. Snow that had once blanketed the campus lawns melted into damp grass, and students traded heavy coats for lighter jackets. The cycle of seasons moved forward, yet for those caught in the delicate triangle of loyalties and grudges, nothing truly settled. Christopher Blackthorne never forgot Cross's vow. It had been spoken in the courtyard with such boldness, such raw defiance, that the words etched themselves into his mind like scars. Every time he saw Cross Redwood step into a room, the memory replayed, his smirk, his eyes lingering on Iris, the promise to mark her as his own. Christopher carried that memory like a blade strapped to his side, unseen but always ready to draw. And yet, Iris kept the peace. It wasn't indifference. It wasn't that she had dismissed Cross's words entirely. But Iris Stormbane carried herself like the air she was, measured, poised, never allowing herself to be rattled by the provocations of men who thrived on chaos. She treated Cross as if he were neither enemy nor ally, her cool courtesy a shield that no one could penetrate. Cross, however, was not so easily defined. He became a fixture at gatherings, no matter the occasion. At a late winter debate hosted in the Grand Hall, he stood at the edge of the crowd, leaning against a column with his arms folded, his dark eyes flicking between Iris and Christopher. At the monthly dining banquets, he sat just close enough to catch Iris's gaze, but never close enough to spark an outright confrontation. Even in the library, sanctuary of silence, Cross found reasons to linger, drifting to whatever aisle Iris occupied under the guise of research. He was always watching, always circling, like a hawk that hadn't yet decided whether it was predator or protector. His courtesies kept confusing everyone. Christopher saw only danger. To him, Cross's every word dripped with manipulation. Every smile was calculated, every glance toward Iris was a trespass. Christopher's jaw would clench whenever Cross entered the room, and more than once his hands curled into fists under the table. But Iris, ever composed, would rest a hand gently on his arm, a silent reminder not to rise to the bait. It became their pattern. Christopher simmering, Iris pacifying, and Cross lingering. And though Iris dismissed his threats with her outward calm, one person remembered every detail. Selene. Her young heart is fierce in its loyalty. She never forgot the way Cross had stood in that courtyard, declaring his intention to mark her sister without her permission. She never forgot the look in his eyes, dark, hungry, unapologetic. To her, no small kindness could outweigh that vow. Every time Cross extended a hand, every time he softened his smirk into something almost gentle, Selene's eyes would narrow. Once, during an evening gathering at the Stormbane estate, Selene caught Cross offering to refill Iris's glass of water. Iris accepted without hesitation, murmuring a polite thank you. But Selene saw more. She saw the way Cross's gaze lingered a fraction too long, the way his lips curved as if in secret amusement. Later that night, as Iris brushed her hair before the mirror, Selene perched at the edge of her sister's bed, her voice low but firm. "You can't trust him," she said. Iris sighed, her brush catching in a knot of golden hair. "Selene, not this again." "Yes, this again." Selene's arms crossed tightly over her chest. "He's playing a game, Iris. Maybe you don't see it because you're trying to keep everything calm. But I see it. He's not protecting you. He's circling, waiting." Iris turned, her blue eyes soft with patience. "He hasn't done anything, Selene." "Not yet," Selene countered sharply. "But he will. I just feel it in my bones." The words carried a conviction that made Iris pause. Selene was still young, still learning how sharp the world could be, but her instincts were rarely wrong. Iris reached out, cupping her sister's cheek, her thumb brushing gently across her skin. Selene didn't argue further, but she didn't promise to forget either. Spring bloomed, bringing color back to Lycan Ridge High. The oak tree in the center of campus spread its leaves once more, and life seemed to quicken. Students laughed louder, lingered longer in the courtyards, and even the professors seemed to carry lighter moods. But beneath the surface, the uneasy peace stretched thin. At a spring banquet hosted by House Silverfang, the tension nearly broke. The hall was filled with music, the clink of crystal glasses, the mingling of heirs and allies. Iris, radiant in a soft blue dress that echoed her eyes, stood with Maya near the refreshment table. They were laughing at something trivial when Cross appeared, dressed in sharp black, his posture relaxed but his gaze fixed only on her. Christopher spotted him from across the room. His breath caught, his body stiffening. He began to cross the hall, each step measured but heavy with intent. Cross reached Iris first. "You look—" He paused, his eyes trailing over her with a dangerous softness, like the spring itself. Maya bristled, half a step forward, ready to intervene. But Iris, ever composed, tilted her chin. "Flattery doesn't suit you, Cross." His smirk flickered, almost vanishing. Maybe not. But honesty does. Before Iris could reply, Christopher's hand closed firmly around hers. He stepped between them. "She doesn't need your honesty. Or your attention, Cross." For a moment, the air in the hall seemed to still. Students nearby pretended to be absorbed in conversation, though their ears strained to catch every word. Cross tilted his head lazily, the ghost of a smirk returning. "Always the protector, Blackthorn. Tell me, what happens when she doesn't need protecting anymore?" Christopher's jaw tightened, but Iris's grip on his hand steadied him. She spoke before he could. "Then perhaps," Iris said coolly, "we'll discover who you really are without your shadows." For a flicker of a second, Cross's expression shifted. Something unreadable, something softer. Then it was gone, replaced by the smirk that had become his armor. He stepped back, inclining his head mockingly. "As you wish, Stormbane." The tension broke, conversation resumed, and the music carried on. But in the hearts of those who had witnessed it, the memory remained. Chapter 31. New Beginnings. The graduation hall of Lycan Ridge High was alive with a kind of electricity that only came on nights like this. The vast auditorium had been transformed from its usual polished formality into something bordering on magical. Gold and silver banners streamed from the ceiling beams, swaying gently as the air vents hummed above. Rows of chairs gleamed under the bright stage lights, each one filled with the families of Lycan Ridge's most powerful houses: Stormbane, Redwood, Silverfang, Blackthorn, all seated shoulder to shoulder, their hushed conversations layering into a low, constant hum. The scent of roses drifted everywhere. Bouquets lined the stage steps, petals blushing under the overhead lights, and corsages pinned to dresses carried their own perfume, blending into something thick and sweet that hung in the air. Excitement buzzed in every corner of the room, whispered jokes, camera flashes, proud parents straightening ties and smoothing dresses as they craned their necks to spot their sons and daughters. For Iris Stormbane, standing in her deep blue graduation gown, it felt like a moment suspended in time. Triumphant, yes, but also bittersweet in ways she hadn't anticipated. She held her cap loosely under her arm, fingers pressing against its edge as if grounding herself. Her blonde hair caught the light, shining as though it had absorbed the very gold strung across the hall. She smiled, but her heart pounded in her chest, too aware that this was not just a ceremony. It was an ending, and endings, she knew, always carried the shadow of beginnings. Beside her, Maya Redwood embodied the opposite mood entirely. Her wild red hair seemed even brighter beneath the stage lights, and her laughter carried through the rows with unapologetic ease. She gestured animatedly as she spoke to Damien, who sat a few seats behind her with a smirk plastered across his face. Maya's hands moved so much as she talked that the tassel of her cap swung dangerously, nearly whacking Iris in the arm. "Don't start crying yet," Maya teased, catching Iris's small, thoughtful expression. Save the tears for after I make my speech 10 times better than yours." Iris rolled her eyes, but the warmth in them betrayed her. It wasn't a competition. "Everything's a competition," Maya said, grinning. "That's why I love it," the announcer's voice rang out, echoing through the microphone as names were called one by one. Families clapped, whistles erupted, phones lifted high in the air to capture shaky videos of the proud march across the stage. Iris's turn came, her heels clicking softly on the polished wood as she accepted her certificate. The roar of applause from the storm-bane section of the hall rose above the others, but she only glanced once at the sea of faces, her gaze snagging on a familiar pair of wide blue-gray eyes in the second row. Selene. Her little sister sat with her hands folded primly in her lap, but her lips were pressed into a tight pout. Her white dress, dotted with tiny flowers, seemed too solemn for someone her age, though the bow in her hair was slightly crooked, betraying her restlessness. Iris offered her a small wave as she crossed the stage, and for a fleeting second, Selene's pout cracked into the tiniest smile. The ceremony wound to its conclusion with a final wave of caps in the air. Cheers echoed from every corner of the hall, parents clapping, students screaming, teachers smiling in relief that another year had passed successfully. Streamers fell from above, metallic ribbons catching in hair and gowns as laughter rose like a wave that seemed to carry the graduates with it. Iris turned, heart swelling, and pulled Maya into a tight hug. The fabric of their gowns rustled as Maya squeezed back fiercely. "We did it," Iris whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Maya's laughter softened, turning into something real and tender. "We did," she agreed, pressing her cheek briefly against Iris's shoulder. "Now the real adventure begins." For a moment it was just the two of them, holding on to the friendship that had carried them through years of whispered secrets, fierce debates, heartbreaks, and laughter. Then, like sunlight breaking through a cloud, the clamor of families rushing toward their graduates pulled Iris back. She scanned the crowd for her family, her heart tightening when she felt a sudden tug at her gown. Looking down, she met Selene's eyes. Her little sister stood there, clutching tightly at the fabric, her small frame almost lost among the sea of bustling people. Her big eyes brimmed with tears that caught in the light, and when she spoke, her voice cracked in a way that shattered Iris's composure. "You're not going back to school with me anymore," Selene whispered, her words trembling. "Who's going to sit with me at lunch? Who's going to help me with my essays? Who's going to walk me to class when the hallways feel too loud?" Her voice broke entirely on the last question, and the pout that had seemed childish earlier was replaced by something raw, fear of losing the one person who had always been her anchor. Iris's heart clenched. She dropped to her knees right there in the crowded hall, uncaring of the hundreds of people swirling around them. She brushed a strand of Selene's golden hair out of her face, fingers gentle against her cheek. "Oh, Selene," Iris murmured, her voice soft but steady. "I'll always be there for you. Just because I won't be in school with you doesn't mean I won't still be your sister. You'll still come home to me every night. I'll still help you with your essays, and I'll still listen to every story about your day. Nothing is changing between us. Not really. You'll see." Selene sniffled, blinking furiously against the tears spilling over her lashes. She searched her sister's face as if trying to decide whether the words were true. Then, with a sudden fierceness, she threw her arms around Iris's neck and clung to her. "Promise?" she whispered into her shoulder, the single word heavy with desperation. "I promise," Iris said firmly, tightening her hold until she felt Selene's shaking ease. "Always." Around them, Maya watched with softened eyes. She stepped forward, resting a hand on Iris's shoulder and crouching slightly to meet Selene's gaze. "And when Iris can't be there, you'll have me," Maya added with a grin that was equal parts teasing and sincere. "I'll make sure no one messes with you at school." Selene giggled, the sound wet with leftover tears but genuine. She sniffed once more, then tucked herself tighter against Iris's side. As the Stormbane family gathered around, cameras flashing, relatives gushing, Iris held her sister's hand like a vow etched into her very bones. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't just an ending. It was the start of everything. And whatever new beginnings awaited her, Selene would always be her heart's greatest promise. The sun had already begun to sink over Lycan Ridge High, painting the horizon in strokes of gold and crimson. The graduation ceremony had ended hours ago, yet laughter and celebration still echoed faintly through the open courtyard. Students in navy blue robes roamed in clusters, their caps crooked, their hearts filled with youthful dreams. But Iris Stormbane sat alone beneath the grand oak tree that stood at the edge of the school grounds, a towering sentinel that had watched generations come and go. The bark beneath her palms was rough, and the scent of summer grass lingered in the air, mingling with faint traces of champagne and rose petals from the earlier festivities. Her gown shimmered in the dying light, the Stormbane crest glinting subtly on her chest. She had done it, graduated top of her class, the pride of one of Lycan Ridge's most powerful families. Yet, instead of celebration, Iris sought stillness. She leaned back against the tree, tilting her face toward the sunset, letting her thoughts drift. Everything was changing so quickly. Soon she would be stepping into her new life. Heir to the Stormbane estate, Luna in training, the future leader of a lineage that carried both legacy and burden. A faint smile curved her lips. "You'd better be proud of me, Mother," she whispered to the wind. "I did it." A light breeze stirred, brushing through her golden hair like a caress. Somewhere in the distance she could hear laughter. Maya's voice, bright and teasing, calling out to her to join the others at the after-party. Iris smiled faintly but didn't move. She wanted a few minutes more. That was when she noticed it, a small silver box resting delicately at the base of the tree. Frowning, Iris leaned forward and picked it up. It wasn't there earlier, she was certain. The box was simple but elegant, tied with a slender ribbon. A folded parchment sat beneath it, its edges sealed with crimson wax stamped with a faint symbol of a rose. Her curiosity piqued. She broke the seal and opened the note. The handwriting was elegant, sharp and precise, each word pressed deeply into the parchment, as though written with intent. To the golden flame beneath the storm. Your light burns brighter than the stars that envy your grace. Your laughter, music that bends even the fiercest hearts to stillness. If beauty had a form, it would bow to you. If courage had a name, it would echo yours. Tonight, wear this and remember, someone out there adores you more than words dare to say. Your secret admirer. Iris's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes shifted to the silver box again, trembling slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside lay a pendant, simple, gleaming and shaped like a lightning bolt. It was beautiful in its craftsmanship, polished to perfection, cool beneath her fingertips. She smiled softly, her heart fluttering. There was only one person she could imagine sending something like this. Christopher Blackthorne. The thought of him, his dark hair, his steady blue eyes, the way he always seemed to watch her as though she were the only person in the world, made her cheeks flush pink. They had been inseparable in recent months. Study sessions at the academy library, stolen glances across the courtyard, quiet rides home beneath starlit skies. His presence grounded her, made her forget the pressure of her family name. He had promised to come to her graduation, and he had. Standing tall and proud, his eyes had shone when she walked across the stage. Maybe this was his way of saying, "I'm proud of you." Iris unclasped the chain from the box and held it against the light. The silver gleamed, reflecting a shimmer of lightning across her fingers. The design was bold but elegant, fitting for someone like Christopher, who always said she carried a storm within her soul. She placed it around her neck, the cool metal resting just above her heart. It felt right. The faint sound of footsteps echoed behind her, and she turned, half expecting to see Christopher walking toward her, hands in his pockets, that familiar crooked smile on his lips. But no one was there, only the sound of rustling leaves and the gentle hum of the evening wind. She frowned lightly, brushing it off, and turned her gaze back to the horizon. The pendant caught the last rays of the sun, glowing like fire. Elsewhere, in the distance, hidden behind the shadows of the courtyard archway, Cross Redwood watched. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of triumph and longing twisting across his face as he saw her touch the pendant, her eyes filled with quiet joy. He had chosen it carefully. Silver, pure and rare, shaped into lightning, a symbol of her name, her strength, her storm. The poem had taken him hours to craft, every line meant to reach her heart in a way his voice never could. She thought it was from him, of course. From Christopher. Cross's lips curved faintly into a smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "If only you knew, Iris," he murmured. "If only you knew who truly sees you." The faint laughter of students nearby broke his trance. He took one last look at her sitting beneath the oak tree, golden hair dancing in the wind, and turned away, his footsteps silent as he melted back into the crowd. Above him, the first stars began to appear, cold, distant, and watchful. Later that night, Iris returned home. The celebration had ended, but she still wore the pendant, occasionally glancing at it with a soft smile. Her younger sister, Selene, peeked through the door as Iris sat before her mirror, brushing her hair. "What's that?" Selene asked curiously. "Graduation gift," Iris said simply, her smile deepening. "From Christopher, I think." Selene tilted her head. "Did he say that?" "No," Iris admitted, her fingers brushing the lightning charm. "But who else could it be?" Selene grinned mischievously. "You two are so obvious it's painful. Go to bed, Selene." Her sister giggled and disappeared down the hall, her laughter fading into the quiet. Iris looked once more at her reflection, the pendant glowing faintly in the dim lamplight. Something about it felt strange, heavy, almost. But she brushed the thought aside. For now she allowed herself to feel happy, to believe that her story was unfolding just as it should, that her love, her dreams, and her future were all secure. Outside, in the darkened gardens of the Stormbane estate, Cross Redwood stood beneath the same oak tree, the night wind tugging at his coat. He glanced up toward Iris's window, where a faint golden glow spilled onto the lawn. His jaw clenched. His eyes, cold and sharp as steel, reflected the same silver glint as the pendant now resting against her heart. He whispered into the quiet night, his voice low, almost reverent. "One day, you'll know it was me, Iris. One day, you'll wear my mark, not his." The breeze carried his words away into the silence, leaving only the rustle of the trees, and beneath the moonlight, the oak stood tall, witness to a moment of innocence that would, one day, become the root of tragedy. The silver pendant gleamed once more before the light in Iris's room went out. That night, Lycan Ridge slept under a calm sky, unaware that the spark of an obsession had just been born, one that would, in time, ignite a storm strong enough to change every life it touched. If you enjoyed this audiobook, become a member of my channel for the other parts of this interesting audiobook, and also have early access to stories and more second parts. Subscribe to my channel and save the playlist for more upcoming audiobooks. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Check out new audiobooks in my channel. Who do you think will win Iris Stormbane's heart? Comment your answers in the comments section. Thanks for listening.